is Tom Alpel, and welcome to the Art of Nothing Wilderness Survival video series.
Good morning. I'm Melvin Beatty. This is my cousin Tom. We've been out here running around in the mountains for the last 15 years together. We're up here in the high mountains in Montana. Mid-July, it just rained last night. The meadows are wet, they're green. We just passed the last cabin of the people that inhabited this area, and we're off to explore the country that's behind us.
This is my girl, my sweetheart Timber, and we're going to go out and make do with what we can find, both working with the natural resources that are here, plus working with whatever's been left behind by the people that were here before. So let's do it.
Let's do it. Let's get out of here. Come on, Doug.
Now you might be wondering what we brought along for equipment on this trip, and of course we have the clothes we have on, plus our knives.
Stone knife.
Oh, stone knives, plus everything in the backpack. And let's show you what's in there. Now it's important to be equipped with only the best wilderness survival gear, so let me show you what we brought. Have some sunscreen with bug repellent in it. You have 2 water bottles. Some drops for treating our water. A leash for the dog. And of course, some dog food for the dog. Oh yeah. And my sunglasses.
We showed you over here that we brought stone tools with us, but we're wanting to see what we can use in the local area. Basically, we're dealing with granite here, and granite, when you break it, it doesn't create a sharp enough edge. It's very coarse and porous, and so there's no edging to it. So we're looking at least finding a hammer stone or something that we could work into projectile points or knives or something like that if we find some glass bottles and etc. So I'm constantly keeping my eyes open for something I use. And this one here looks like it's going to hold together. I'll carry it with me. Well, from the looks of what we got here, we've got one piece of glass that's going to come down this little drainage a little bit. Looks like there's another one under here. Looks like it's the bottom out of a bottle. Pretty large bottle. All right. Nice piece of glass to work with. Making some tools. Well, from looks, I found another fairly good sized bottom. There's some pieces out of a crock here. Let's find a larger piece. Lunch. Ants.
Yeah, lemony tasting.
Mm-hmm. Not bad. Not bad. It's sweet. You got a bunch rolled under the dirt here. It's kind of winter them out.
Now before we get started making some knives with the glass we found, let me talk a bit more about the knives that we have. This is Mel's knife here, and it's a church stone, which is real hard and good for sawing and cutting with. You can really work on wood with this. And this one was made by master flint knapper Ron Macy, and it's a beautiful knife made out of obsidian. Now when you see something like this, you might think, well, that's really something, and I'd like to be able to do that. But I want to point out that it isn't necessary to be able to work stone like this and to make a piece as incredible as this for survival purposes. In fact, since this is made of obsidian, it's actually a very brittle knife that would break easily with woodworking or something like that. So this would make a good skinning knife, but not necessarily a multi-purpose woods knife. So looks aren't everything when you're working with primitive knives, and what we're going to show you is how to make a very functional tool working with the glass.
We found a little area where there's an older fire pit so that we can keep them having debitage all around the area. So we're going to do our napping here with this glass that we found. Also here in the fire pit there was a nail which we'll be able to use for some percussion or pressure flaking. So I'm going to practice on this a little bit and see what we can make for some tools out of it. And also, on the way up I found a little pad here. I'm going to use that as a piece that goes on my leg to do some percussion work. What I'm doing is I'm using a hammer stone, and I'm going to make a edge on this so I can do some percussion work. First thing I want to do is I want to be able to get rid of any sharp edges. I already found that I'm bleeding off of it, so I want to rough up any edges here that are sharp that I'm going to get hooked on. I want to get this down into one flat pie face, so I'm going to work these edges off a little bit. Also, you notice I put my glasses on because out here where we're at, I don't want to take a chance of getting a piece of glass in my eye. Good safety here. Need to abrade it a little bit. This is that one stone I found earlier that was a piece of granite. It seems to be working fairly well, staying together. I think this is such a large piece, I'm just going to kind of create a edge here for a knife that we can use it as a large knife. So preparation work here is just to get it thinned down so I can start going both ways. Get rid of this little piece that's hanging out here. Be just like working a piece of obsidian that's flat. I've got a lip here, and I want to be able to make my median lines so I can take flakes in both directions and create an edge. And so what I'm doing now, I'm pulling my edge up here onto this side, and I'm going to take it to this side, pulling off that lip a little bit, and be able to create a median line with that thickness. You can see the thickness of the stuff is real thick except for right there. So I'm going to take one off here and see if I can take that little lip off. Alright, then I just take another, got my platform set here, I'll take a piece off right there. Thing it down now, see my median line is becoming up in here. Moving it over to my left. Make sure I braid it so it's not sharp on my fingers. Now I've got a place here to come off of her next bite. Braid it. Got a platform there to work off of. Now you can see I've thinned it down to where I got the thickness all the way back. My median lines moved down. Now I'm going to take that all the way on around, so it's going to take me a little bit, but that's where I'm headed with it. I'm going to go all the way around this piece. This piece of granite seems to be working pretty good. You need a stone that's softer than the glass, so that you're not hitting it. Seems to be working pretty well. Come back. This It's like what they call an alternating flaking, where percussion, where I go over one side, come back, go over, come back. So now I'm on below it, so I'm going to catch one here and move it over. Took a flake off the back side. Take one this way. Oops. Got more pieces to work with now. Well, since that happened, I think what I'm going to do here, I want to keep this so we can use it more as a knife, be able to hang on to it without having to haft it. So I'm going to create an edge up here that we can use for cutting and use it more like a ula, where we can work it in this manner. So okay, looks pretty good here. Give you another little. Let's see if I can run some pressure flakes off of this now a little bit. Oh yeah, we're going to be able to work this right down. My pad here is a little stiff, but we're making do with what we have out here, so I'm beginning to flake around this side. I'll come back with another row. We should have us enough there that we can make us a nice little knife out of it. We need to abrade it. Yeah, looks like I'm going to have to do some more percussion work to get thin it a little bit more. Well, as a crude piece, we could be able to cut with it, go around it once more time, and have it sharpened up for when we use it as a tool.
All right.
All right, we got it sharpened up, sharp. We'll leave it like that for, we'll get ready to do our fire. Like I say, now we don't have to haft it. We got enough here that we can hang on to and use it as a knife. So, when I was working this other piece a little bit ago, I had a piece come off the side like right there, and I said I had two pieces to work with. And now that I've finished up this one where it's a functional piece, I picked this one up, and if you see right here, we have a very, very sharp edge. And so what I've been doing, I've been abrading off anything else that would be sharp. And so now we've got a little bitty knife that is very, very sharp right there. It'll be good for butchering, skinning, not for woodworking, but the other softer things. So now out of that, we've got tools and we've got more material to make more after we use this one up.
I didn't bring these sunglasses along just to be cool. I brought them along for a purpose, and that's for eye protection while we're flint knapping. it making pieces. Should have quit while I was ahead.
Very short time we spent over there flint knapping, we created some useful tools. This was the original one that we done over there. It was the blade that we're going to use, like a ula. Out of the glass, created an edge here that will be used like a thumb scraper. We can work some wood with it. And then the original one over there, a really sharp little bitty knife that we got there for skinning and whatnot. These are some little chards that came off, very, very sharp. They would also be for skinning and fleshing. Another one over here, similar. We need to work on a little bit more, and we've got a blade with it. So we've created some tools that we can go prepare for the rest of the evening now and the rest of our time. Look too. We use it when we're making our fire tonight to concentrate the air on the tinder bundle.
The method of fire starting we'll use on this trip is called the hand drill, which is literally rubbing two sticks together to start a fire. And let me give you a peek ahead to see how it works. To do this, we'll need three things. We'll need a fireboard with a hole and a notch in it, and we'll need a tall, skinny spindle or drill, plus we'll need a tinder bundle of soft, dry, fluffy material. To start the fire, we will spin the spindle with our hands to create friction, which will chew off little bits of wood powder that will spill out in the notch of the fireboard and gradually get hot and ignite to form a small ember. We'll transfer the ember into a tinder bundle, then blow it into flame.
Well, when we're out hiking like this, it's always good to kind of keep an eye open for things that you can use for later, like tinder for your fire. And the sagebrush, you can pull off enough to make a decent nesting out of it, collecting as you go. Some of the sagebrush out here a little bigger than others, so I've been collecting a little as we go. I've got a pocket full now, so but at least it's all dry. Come this evening, we'll get our fire going. We'll have a good stuff for making a tinder bundle. Well, I've been collecting some of this tinder off of these sagebrush up here, and we're limited to what we're going to be able to use for fireboards up here. We got sagebrush, we got some quake and aspen over there. But for today, we're gonna go with the sagebrush. After I've gotten the tinder pulled off of it, I've got some boards here that we're gonna have to work them up a little bit, but I think they'll be functional enough for our fireboards. So we're gonna take these with us. I got 2 or 3 here, 4. We're going to take those with us. So we gathered off of one plant, we gathered the tinder for it. Now we've got the fireboard that goes for it. Now we've got to go find our spindle to create the ember. So this is a mullein stalk. This looks like it's probably last year's mullein stalk. Still got some of the older leaves on it. Nice, pretty good size, pretty straight, got a little curve in it. So let's see if I can break this one off. And it broke off. We'll get it back to camp. We'll shorten it up into about 18-20 inches, and we'll have us a hand drill. Well, one of the things that we find in this high country up here where you only have quake and aspen and being able to use for tinder, it's very difficult to get off. In this particular case, the quick enough and has died and has soaked it. So I look like I'd be able to pull off some on the inner side here for some tinder. Fairly long strands in this piece. Unusual. Alright, get some decent pieces off of this. I'm going to get a little more off of here. They have a tendency to want to break up when you grind on them to soften them up. This one here seems to be oh yeah, that'll make a nice nest. Well, you can probably see how it kind of has a tendency to want to crumble on me, so the first little batch I got is probably going to be our best. Put it in my pouch with the rest of the stuff.
Alright, we found a nice sheltered spot underneath these spruce and fir trees here. And the branches are just like natural shingles that really channel away all the water. So no matter how much it rains, it's always a good dry spot underneath these trees. And there's also some good insulating material here that we can work with to build a shelter. Now, obviously we can't have a fire here. It'd be too dangerous for that right now. But there's a good spot just a few feet out here away from the trees where we can start a fire.
Using the knife that we made this morning, we made a scrap around it. You should be able to just snap it right off. There we go. Nice solid pith. Put it up here so I don't get the tip damp. Take a blade and I'm going to trim off all the little nubbins so we can go up and down it with the hand. And this is where that square side on this will come into effect. I can use it like a scraper. Mullet stock works pretty well because it's thinner at the top and gets larger at the bottom, so when it's coming down in a hand fashion, you get more pressure to it. Seems to be pretty straight. Give us some notch cut in our yucca or our sagebrush down there and we'll be in pretty good shape. Boy, sometimes. If anything, let's go with that. This one whirl.
Okay. Mel has picked out a potential fireboard to work with. Now he is starting a hole for the drill. He needs to spin the drill and apply pressure to mate the spindle to the fireboard so that the set starts producing smoke. This step can be challenging with sage and mullein since both are such hard woods. There are much better materials to work with at the lower elevations, but we'll do the best we can with what we have. Now, most people would place their foot directly on the fireboard to hold it down. But Mel isn't as flexible as he used to be, so he puts his foot on another stick, which holds the fireboard firmly in place.
The stick that's coming up against here that I've got my foot on is also allowing me to run the spindle right alongside of it so that it stays in what hole and depression I do have at the time. And this is very tough material to work with. In fact, this is one of the first times I've done a sage on a mullein. It's tough stuff.
Mel is sharpening the tip of the spindle on a rock to try again.
And this hand drill I'm working on, it's sagebrush is very dense and hard, and I was just polishing up my spindle, wasn't going anywhere, so we've added a little bit of sand and a little dirt in it. And work it down with it. Also, I've gone over here and there's a spruce over in here, and I've taken a little piece of the limb and taken the bark off and added it to my hands, give myself a little bit of traction going up and down the spindle. It's working. I can begin to smell the smoke of sagebrush. Begin to see a little bit around there, beginning to mate it up. Aha. So as you see, we got it mated up, ready to cut our notch.
Normally, a notch is cut all the way to the center of the hole, where most of the drilling and heating action is at the tip of the spindle. But mullein has a soft, pithy center that really doesn't contribute towards making an ember. All the action is at the hard outer rim of the drill, so the notch only needs to reach the side of the hole in the fireboard. The edge of this granite block serves as a crude but effective tool to cut the notch. Our glass knife will work for the finishing touches.
As we've been traveling around the mountainside today, I've been stripping off the sagebrush. This was some quick and aspen, more sagebrush, mainly sagebrush up in this country, so that's what we got the most of. The other pocket has some more quick and aspen in it, sagebrush, and that's it. And I want to leave some of this long enough to wrap around here in a bit, so I'm going to work out all the fines and try to get some nice long strands out of this that can go around my bundle. As you can see, the sagebrush just starts to disintegrate on me, and just I'm getting piles of real fines down here on my neckerchief. Keep some longs out here along the side. Keep working this in the middle.
Making a really good tender bundle is essential when working with the materials we have. Even if we get one coal out of this set, there is no guarantee we will be able to get another, so we don't dare let it go out.
So I'm going to use this real fine stuff. I've got all the quick and aspen. There's the center of my nest. Under these conditions, I'm going to make sure that we have a real fine nest here so that it catches on our first coal. Take this quick and aspen, and I'm going to start wrapping it with a little bit of this sagebrush from the longer pieces I have, so I can kind of get it wrapped up and held in place.
Notice that Mel uses the floating technique to warm up the set. He is applying downward pressure, but also raising his fingertips at the end of each spin to bring his hands back up.
As if nothing happens here until we reach 800 degrees. And so there's no sense tiring myself out going up and down the spindle. So I've learned to do the floating motion, floating method. And then when I get close to that ignition point, then I will go down the spindle a few times to create an ember.
Okay, there's the smoke, and now the powder is starting to spill out into the notch. Mel just switched techniques, applying more speed and more downward pressure, allowing his hands to ride all the way down the drill.
As I go down the spindle, it has a tendency to push away from me, which will also kick the coal out of the bowl into the knots of the fireboard. So it all works together and comes together in hoping the coal.
You got one. Cool. All right. Beautiful. Mel likes using the blow tube because it concentrates his breath exactly where he wants it, and the tube absorbs much of the moisture in his breath. All right, nicely done. When you're camping in and around these big spruce and fir trees, you have to be careful where you put your fire, because sometimes the what looks like soil or dirt on the forest floor is really this kind of duff of organic matter, and when you light a fire in it, it'll burn through the ground, and even after you put your fire out, it might be spreading underground for weeks or months before it springs up and makes a forest fire. So we made sure that we have a spot that's got some good wet sand here. We've got our fire right down on some good wet sand, so we know it'll be safe here. Well, there goes the last of our water. It's time to refill our bottles. Now the creeks up here are pretty clean, and I often drink right out of the streams like that. But at the moment I know there's some cows farther upstream from us. So we're going to go ahead and treat this water so that we can be sure it's safe. And the product we're going to use is called aerobic oxygen. Basically, this is just a super concentrate of oxygen, lots and lots of oxygen crammed into a little bit of water. Now, most of the pathogens or parasites that in the water that could make you sick are anaerobic. That is, they need to live in an environment without air. And your gut is like that. There's really no air or very little air in your gut. And if you introduce enough air, then it kills them. So this aerobic oxygen takes a whole lot of oxygen and crams it into a very little space, puts a lot of oxygen into this bottle of water, and just a few drops of this added to our jug of water will kill the bacteria and make this safe to drink. So all we need to do, we fill up our bottle most of the way, then add a few drops of this and shake it up a little bit, turn the bottle over and let the water leak out through the threads of the lid so it'll treat that part of the bottle too. Then you just set it aside for a few minutes, let the oxygen do its thing, and it's ready to drink. So far today we've been able to improvise some functional knives from the materials we've found. We've made a hand drill set and been able to start a fire with that. And we've found a good campsite that'll keep us dry and with some materials to build a shelter. We've also purified water, so we have safe water to drink. And the next thing we need to start thinking about is what we're going to eat. Now there are lots of deer and elk and moose right in this area, even bear, but of course we're not going to hunt any of those. That's a bit more than we want for a weekend, and it's also out of season. So what else is there? Well, the most abundant food source in these mountain meadows is really the ground squirrels, and now a lot of people call them gophers. And they're really not related to gophers. This is more a type of squirrel that lives in the ground, hence we call them ground squirrels. But they are all over, and the trick is just a matter of catching them. Now, I've often heard people mock the ground squirrels. They say, "Stupid gophers," and blam, they shoot them, blow their heads off, and somehow think that they're cool. That it's manly to be able to pull a trigger and do that. But I think that's pretty lame. And really, if you go out with your bare hands and try to catch ground squirrels, it's really a humbling thing, and you realize they're not that stupid, they're really smart. And I've spent about 15 years out working on different methods to effectively catch ground squirrels on these camping trips, using many different styles of traps, some that are all primitive that I've made in the field, others that improvising off of modern materials, and tried this and that, and I can always catch one or two here and there, but in 15 years I have not yet been able to catch enough to sustain me by using my own hands, basically. And so on this trip we brought along a secret weapon to be able to use to our advantage, and that's timber. Now Timber's method is pretty simple. When we go walking through these meadows and we scare up the ground squirrels, they go running for their holes, and she's just faster than they are sometimes, so once in a while she'll get lucky and catch one, and we're counting on her to provide us some dinner.
You're a good girl.
Well, as far as dog catching our first meal, we want to transport it back to camp, and I'm sure they have some fleas, so I don't really want it on my body, so I'm going to hang it on a stick and through the trail we'll go.
One of the glass shards from our knapping work had a razor-sharp edge, just right for skinning. Mel is case skinning this squirrel, which involves making a single slit across the back legs and then peeling the skin off like a sock. The skin could easily be made into a bag if we needed one, or used with the hair side in to make an instant moccasin for someone with smaller feet.
Little critters are sometimes a lot more difficult to do, especially when you have big hands like mine.
With the legs, you need to work your finger in between the meat and the skin. Then you can pull the hide right off. The same trick works well for the tail. Once you get the hide started, it pulls easily off the body. But then you have to stop and pull the front legs through. The trickiest part is often the head, where you have to use a knife to cut through tissues around the ears, eyes, and mouth. Mel is using the flame to burn off any hairs that were left stuck to the body. Now he is cutting open the chest cavity. Notice how neatly and cleanly he is removing the innards. I always make a mess of ruptured guts when I do it.
I've cut up close to the neck here, and so the esophagus is cut. So I'll be able to reach up in the cavity, and I'm pulling the lungs, the heart, and everything out at one time. And also, I pulled it down to where I've got to pull out the large intestines from the other end, and you can see I'm pulling it back out through the pelvis area, and now it's clean.
Okay, time to cook. Mel is cutting off the front quarters to start with. Here is a cool trick. Just slap the raw meat onto the face of a hot rock and it sticks there. The hot rock cooks one side of the meat while the fire cooks the other.
Cooking up this animal, this little critter, was interesting because in my area of the country I run around in, I have large slabs of basalt, and basalt being a lot thinner, maybe no more than 2 inches in thickness. They heat better, and so in cooking this, that large rock was hot on one side but not through. And on a smaller, thinner rock, it's a much better heat, and they'll stick a lot easier, quicker.
We'll set the hindquarters aside for now and cook the body on a spit stick. For a ground squirrel, there really is quite a bit of meat on this carcass.
This little critter was really quite fat. You can see it sizzle down the rock, and the good fat that you need out here if you was on a survival situation. You need that fat.
Now, isn't that just pitiful?
Done?
You know, for a rodent, this meat is really good. It is sure nice and fat and greasy too. That is a positive thing out here. Mel preferred the leg meat, but I thought everything was good, so I cooked and ate the heart, the lungs, and liver, and kidneys. In fact, there was a lot of fat around the organs, so I separated it out and cooked and ate that too. Mel didn't want any meat off the carcass after the way Timber crunched it when she caught it, so I carefully picked off all the meat I could from the neck and ribs, and oh yeah, I ate the tongue and cheek meat too. You know, Timber won't even eat the ground squirrels. She just likes to crunch down on them until they stop wiggling, and that's it. She's done with them. She just drops them and leaves them. So, you know, that's fine with us. We'll eat the ground squirrels, and she can have dog food. Well, dinner was small, but definitely refreshing. And now we're getting on towards the evening and really need to get going on this shelter so we can sleep warm and comfortable tonight. And you can see I've broken out some of the sticks back here to make a little bit more room. And now we need to clean it up a bit more, build some log walls, a log roof, and then cover that over with insulating debris. We will also bury some hot rocks in the floor for a little bit of extra warmth. The shelter we are building might best be described as a type of debris hut. That is a stick framework covered over with insulating pine needle debris scraped off the forest floor. A typical debris hut might have a foot or two of insulating materials on it, which is so much insulation that you'd be able to sleep in there and stay warm with just your body heat. But insulating materials are scarce here in the mountains, so this is about as good a site as we'll ever find, and we'll be lucky here just to get 3 or 4 inches of good insulation on our shelter. Timber caught another small one while we were out looking for shelter materials, and we'll be able to cook that later on, but right now we need to keep working on the shelter. We'll use this creek as a natural refrigerator to keep our ground squirrel cold until we can butcher it and eat it. In my book, Participating in Nature, I described what I call the 4 elements of shelter. That is shingles to keep you dry, insulation to trap in valuable heat, weather stripping to block out cold drafts of air, plus a source of heat. And every shelter that you should build should really be uniquely designed to incorporate the 4 elements of shelter in a way that is appropriate to the time and the place that you are, as well as your goals while you're there. In other words, if you are applying these principles correctly, then every shelter that you build should be unique and unlike anything you've built before. And it's true, I've never built a shelter quite like this one before, yet I know approximately what to expect just based on the 4 elements of shelter. So in this case, we're using the canopy of the spruce and fir trees overhead as a source of natural shingles. We're using the pine needle debris off the forest floor as a source of insulation, and in this case it'll also serve as airproofing by stuffing every little nook and cranny with that material. And then we'll be using hot rocks from the fire as a viable heat source in this shelter.
Preparation for the first evening in our debris hut. It's dark plus now, and I'm to my tail's end. I'm tired. Luckily, I've got a young person Tom along that's done a lot of the movement of the debris and got it moved in here, because we've been up and down and over these hills the last few hours gathering all the things we needed to create the fire, some food, our water, and all the materials for our shelter. And so along with videoing this, it takes a lot of time. In a real situation, it would be possible that you could get all these things done and you'd have your shelter put together before dark.
As is often the case, we finished up our shelter just as it was getting very black out, and so you'll have to wait till morning to see it. And in the meantime, we're good and tired and ready for bed. We're going to carry some hot rocks over to our shelter to help keep us warm tonight, and crawl into bed. Good morning. It's kind of a long night of intermittent sleep last night, and sometimes that happens when you're still building your shelter and it gets dark on you. But you can see that we got most of the shelter sealed up pretty well. It's just right here in the front we got this big gaping hole with a lot of space right here, and then air coming through the sticks to the roof as well. So we pulled up this big pile of debris last night to close it off as much as possible. But with all that cold air in there, it didn't take us long to get cold inside the shelter. So we had hot rocks in there with us, but when those cooled off a bit and the cool air came in from outside, we scrambled out and started the fire up. There's still some hot coals, so we started the fire up again. And, well, Mel slept next to the fire the rest of the night, and I got some more hot rocks out of the fire and brought them up here and crawled to the very back of the lodge and slept around the hot rocks. And that worked okay, but I had to bring in 3 more batches of hot rocks to make it all the way till morning. So we've got some work to do on this shelter today to be comfortable for tonight. We have to close in the doorway, make the doorway a lot smaller, and tighten up all these holes. And tonight we'll use some bigger hot rocks to make sure that this shelter stays good and warm. Alright, I finally get to use my fancy stone knife. I've been determined that I would use it for something on this trip, and it sure works good for skinning. Unfortunately, timber punctured the gut of this ground squirrel pretty good when she killed it, so I'm making a real mess of ruptured guts here through my skinning and butchering, but I probably would have done that anyway. At least it's not too hard to wash it up good and clean. Okay, now we're ready to cook it, and since this squirrel is nice and small, we'll just stick it to the rock and cook it all at once with the heart and lungs and liver and kidneys right inside. You know, it's kind of cute sitting there on the rock with the tail sticking out like that. You ready for some?
Thank you.
Well, this squirrel makes a pretty good breakfast, even if it is a little on the small side. So what'd you have to eat this morning? Now, when you're breaking branches off of trees, the natural thing to do is to push on the branch until it breaks. And when it does break, it seldom breaks off cleanly at the trunk, but usually leaves this jagged little point sticking out, which is unsightly and also potentially hazardous. And besides that, when the branches give way, you feel this jarring sensation in your joints, which could easily translate into aches and pains later on, especially when you're breaking those bigger branches. So let me show you a little tool here that makes it a lot easier to delimb these trees. Now this fancy tool is called the Joe stick, and I don't know why it's not the Henry stick or the Isabella stick, but it comes from martial arts, and it's a great tool for breaking firewood and knocking the sticks out of trees. Now, you might expect you get the most force out of it holding it down at the end like a baseball bat, like that, but you actually hold the Joe about a third of the way up like this, and you swing it around, building up speed with the maximum thrust coming at the point of impact. So let's give it a try.
Cleaning out this underbrush and stuff to make our debris hut here is, for me, it's been a learning experience. Like I say, Tom and I have traveled together for 15 years, but I learned something about Joe, the Joe stick. I was using a baseball bat, and he came along and he was knocking off limbs I couldn't break by hand or with my baseball swing. So, again, a young pup teaches an old dog a new trick.
This is a plant called Sweet Cicely, and it is in the parsley family. You can tell that because it has a compound umbel, that is, that where the flowers came out and then produced the seeds, it splits. It's almost kind of like an umbrella that's, well, kind of mangled umbrella, I guess. And then at the end of each one of these spokes, there's a smaller umbel. That's why it's called a compound umbel, is because there's a big one, and at the end of each spoke there's a little one. Now, there are some very deadly plants in the parsley family, so it is important to be able to recognize members of this family and to be sure of exactly which plant you are working with. And in this case, Sweet Cicely happens to be a wonderful edible, and it has really kind of a licorice-like flavor. The flavor is real strong in the seeds, and the root is just packed with flavor like you wouldn't believe. So you can dig up the root and boil it, and then use the flavoring to flavor like your baked goods or just as tea or whatever. Seeds make great tea as well. Be sure to use my book, Botany in a Day, so that you can learn to recognize these patterns of the plant families. This plant is a perennial sunflower from the sunflower family, also known as the aster family or the composite family. And what the word composite means is that there are many, many tiny little flowers which together make up this large head. Now, because this is truly a type of sunflower, it produces edible sunflower seeds. And if we look at an older blossom like this and pull it apart, you can see the little black seeds forming in there, and those are edible. While these sunflower seeds are still young and soft, you can gently squeeze the nut meat right out of them and eat that. but in many ways it makes more sense just to eat them shells and all. But be careful not to get too much of the green stuff in between the sunflower seeds, as that tends to have a real resinous taste. Hey, save some for me, will ya?
Hey, hurry up.
This is a plant called a dwarf huckleberry, and we really hit the bonanza here. This is about as big as these huckleberries ever get.
As Tom introduced the plant over here as the dwarf huckleberry. All my life I've called it the grouseberry. So up where I live, the grouse eat a lot. I found when I was doing it, if you done them one at a time, it would take forever. So my technique is to take the limb and just bring it into your mouth and pull it back out. And sometimes you get a leaf, and sometimes you get all the berries in one time.
Phew! So that's what timber rolled in. That is one seriously dead cow.
Having timber along, and we've just passed this cow carcass and all the bear scat, she is looking down there in the willows, and she's ears are perking. She's stopping, looking into the willows, and we figured that something's in there, so we called her back and we put her leash on. It's always good to have this available when you have your animals in the woods. And no sooner we've done that than here comes Bruno up out of the woods and looking directly at us. And eventually sees us, gives a whiff of us, and spooks and runs down. And actually he ran down into the woods and circled up around in front of us and got on the top side of us, on the back of us, and the mountainside here. And we're still watching him.
Hey, here's a wild strawberry. Haven't seen too many of those around. Sure not going to pass them up. Good.
As I've gotten older, I've found that I need the extra little helper, a walking stick. It helps me on the hillsides, helps me going downhill, makes for a lot safer journey in my stepping. Tom doesn't use one, and I'm still 20 paces behind him, and hopefully he'll slow down over the years and I'll be able to catch up.
You're a good girl, Timber. You're a good girl. This is a plant called brook saxifrage, and it doesn't have a lot of flavor, it just tastes kind of green, but it is a good way to get your greens. Over there. Hey, smell these wild roses. Aren't they absolutely delicious? This is an introduced and sometimes invasive plant called a musk thistle. And it also has an edible stem, which is really good once you get past the spines. Now, as they mature, they turn woody to the point that you can't eat them any longer. So you have to look for some that are still tender enough to eat. To do that, you just gently bend the stalk, and if you see it flex like that, that means it's okay. Now, to harvest this stalk, you need to cut through it part way, then grab the stalk and peel it back with 2 fingers, and you can see that it leaves a bare strip down the side as you do that. That bare spot makes it easier to get in here and start peeling down the other sides until you've stripped off all the spines. And there we have a thistle stalk ready to eat, and this is just a wonderful, tasty, juicy treat on a summer day. Here's a musk thistle in full bloom, and these flowers are edible and delicious. Now, the musk thistle is closely related to the artichoke, and you may have noticed the similarity in the heads there. And of course, these are edible and can be used like artichokes. So let's gather a bunch and bring them back to camp. We found this aluminum can that we can use as a pot to cook up our thistle artichokes, and Mel cut the top off but also left it attached part way so we can use it as a handle to more easily get the pot on and off the fire. And so we stuffed all the thistle heads in there and got those cooking to eat. Now the little green spines on the outside of these thistle heads are called bracts, which basically means a modified leaf. And in the case of the artichoke, you would peel those off one at a time and dip them in butter and then eat the fleshy part off the base. Well, these thistles are a bit too small for that. You can just chew them up whole, and that works. You just get a lot of fiber that way. And what we prefer is just to peel them open and to eat out the artichoke heart there in the center, and it is really good.
Everything out here is free if you just go get it.
That is so good. It really does taste just like an artichoke. I guess it's just in my nature that I can't force myself to go out and work on shelter in the middle of a bright, sunny day. I need to feel the need for shelter before I'm motivated to work on it. Whether it's this feeling of a storm creeping up on me, or just the feeling of nightfalls coming on, and reached into that instinctive need that, okay, now it's time to work on shelter. And now is definitely, it's that time of day. And so what we're trying to do is to tighten this shelter up by closing in the front a little bit, building these little rock walls, and I'm being careful to put debris in between the stones to make sure we don't have any cold air seeping in that way. And of course also need to fill in these gaps in the branches over the doorway so that no cold air will come in that way either. And finally need to make sure we have a big enough pile of debris in front of the door so that that's good and tight.
We've opted to use these long, dead quicken aspen that were picked up off the ground down here, and the wind had blown them over, so we needed no tools to gather them.
While it is still light enough to see, let me show you a little trick I discovered last night that makes it a lot easier to move these hot rocks. Roll the rock away from the fire, then wrap a green bough around it, and you can carry it anywhere you want it. Just be careful that it's not so hot that it will ignite the debris when you put it in your shelter. Good morning. Slept a lot better last night. Shelter was good and warm, and only got up once just before dawn to haul in a few more hot rocks. But other than that, just slept like a log.
I slept much warmer because I was inside the debris hut this time. Other than, like you said, we had to heat the rocks one time. It was a good night's sleep. Well, on our early morning trek here, Timber found us a kill that had apparently been done in the last day or so. It's a little fawn, still got some spots in it. It's a mule deer, and from indication it looks like it was a little buck. So hadn't been killed too long. It's not full of maggots. There's a few laid in it now, but it hasn't been dead very long. Looks like it made a run somewhere. It's got all scarred up and whatever brought it down. Hadn't heard any coyotes or anything. So our guess is as good as anybody's. Possibly mountain lion.
Now, the first thought that popped into my mind when I saw the back end of this fawn is, it's like, oh, Timber, what have you done? Because she's certainly very capable of bringing down a little fawn like this. And, while I thought she was curled up sleeping outside the shelter all night, this made me wonder, was she really out here killing deer? And then I realized that, well, no, she would have been all stained in blood if she had done this. And that was a great relief to me because you really can't have pets out terrorizing the wildlife. Even if your dog isn't capable of bringing down a deer, just the stressing them when they need to be building up fat reserves to get through the winter, stressing them now could cause them to die of starvation later on. So, it's important to control your pets and so that they're not out terrorizing the wildlife. And this may seem like a double standard when we've been allowing Timber, even encouraging her to chase and kill the ground squirrels. And maybe it is a double standard, but I see a difference. And that's simply that people are out here using these ground squirrels for target practice all the time and, shooting hundreds of them, but they breed so fast that it never seems to make a dent in the population. In other words, it's sustainable. If Timber comes out here and chases the ground squirrels and kills some, at least it's sustainable. So The point is that I want you to think about it. And when you bring your pets out into nature, just asking you to be responsible for them so they're not out terrorizing the wildlife. Hey, look at all these giant puffball mushrooms. You know, if these were younger and still white inside, they would be edible and really good food. But it looks like these are a little bit far gone. Now we've started this trip with almost nothing but the dog. And through this video, you've seen us successfully demonstrate all the skills to meet our basic needs, from shelter, fire, safe water to drink, plus plant and animal foods. And if you stop and think about it, we really brought more gear than we needed. We stayed in the shade as much as possible and tolerated the bug bites, so we never did use the sunscreen with bug repellent. And we brought stone knives, but we also made knives here that were just as functional. We brought water bottles and drops to treat our water, but the truth is, I would have been just as happy drinking out of the stream. So the only gear we really needed, besides my sunglasses, was the leash, the dog food, and the dog. But the true art of nothing isn't just about getting by with nothing, it's also about learning to be comfortable with nothing. Take sleep, for example. Now, even with the best of plans, your shelter may not be as warm and cozy as you hoped it would be, and you might not get much sleep. But don't fret over it. Just accept your situation and know that in the morning you'll have a brand new day to fine-tune your shelter for the night to come. And what about food? Now, you may be expecting your pooch to bring home the meals, and what if she doesn't bring home quite as much as you'd hoped for? Well, that's okay too. Being hungry from time to time was a way of life for our ancestors, and something we don't experience nearly enough in the modern world. For me, my office is right next to the kitchen, and I eat all the time. The only time I really experience hunger is when I come out on trips like this, and that just makes the food taste that much better when I get back home. In other words, the art of nothing is about learning to be comfortable even when you're not.
Been interesting over the years that Tom and I have been traveling together to see how we've gone from a modern day backwards, and the art of nothing is really fun. It's a challenge, and I believe Tom has taken it to its ultimate in terms of art of nothing. And it is true, is to be comfortable where you are with what you have, and if it is nothing, then be comfortable with it.
I want to remind you to always put safety first. Be sure to wear eye protection when you're napping tools from glass. And on a real wilderness survival expedition, I would always carry matches and a lighter in case of emergencies. But for the purposes of this video, we've never been far from the truck where we can recharge our camera batteries, and even if the truck broke down, it's less than a 3-hour walk back to my house from here. So be careful while you're practicing these skills, and always make sure you have that safety net in place. When we first arrived in this thicket of spruce and fir trees a few days ago, there was a nearly impenetrable tangle of dead sticks and debris, and I find a lot of places like that when I'm out camping, often so thick that even the wildlife avoid using them. All that dead material is also a fire hazard, and a small fire that gets into it will quickly jump to the crowns of the trees, causing a major forest fire. Well, we've opened it up a lot in here, just through the process of gathering resources for our shelter and wood for the fire. And this place will continue to be open and available to the deer and the elk and the moose that use this area after we're gone. And of course, this is the same thing our ancestors did for tens of thousands of years, providing the service of stewardship as they moved their camp from place to place. Our ancestors seldom had the need to tear down their old shelters when they moved camp, but the world is a different place today, and this isn't necessarily the kind of things that people want to find when they're out hiking in the woods. Now, I do take most of my shelters down, unless I have a site that is especially well hidden, and I know that I will be back to use it in the future. In this case, we're in a place where I know that people will be coming through here from time to time, so I definitely want to tear down this shelter and scatter the debris. So we'll go ahead and take this down before we go.
Well, I hate to say it, but taking down this shelter is going to kind of be a sad point. It's taken us this amount of time to get it perfected to the point where we had a good night's sleep, and now to dismantle it after 2 nights, it doesn't seem right. It seems like we should probably stay another 4 or 5 days to recoup the time and the perfection that we've done to create this shelter from nothing to something here, that we've got a bed to be able to sleep in. So again, if this had been in a real secluded area, I would have opted to leave it up so we could come back up here in midwinter and try it. We have doused all the coals with water. We've stirred it up so that we have a dead out fire, and before we start spreading it around out here into the country and it'll break down, you can't see that we're really here. Kick over some debris on it, and looks like nobody's been here.
Well, it's evening here now, and the sun will be setting soon, and we need to get home to our families.
And it's been a fun 3 days. We've tested some skills. We had limited conditions up here. It's been a great time to get back together. We haven't done this in a lot of years.
That's right. It's been a wonderful time, and I hope you'll join us next time for our next Art of Nothing Wilderness Survival video as we journey to a new place in a new time and demonstrate completely different skills to meet our basic needs.
And I'm looking forward to it, but for right now, we need to get down the trail.
All right, well, let's go.
Let's go.